And now we're going to jump into our final question today. And our final question comes from Miss Iris
Woo, Irish
People.
peoples.
And Iris writes, she writes, "Hey Alex, can actors work in both the DCEU and the MCU at the same time? I saw your Tom Holland video and I was wondering if it's possible that actors can play in both universes." Well, thank you for your question, Tom. Not Tom. Sorry, Iris.
I see how
Uh,
that happened.
let me point out something really quick because when I posted that, which what Iris is referring to, I posted a video about a week ago, about Tom Holland, not even a rumor, speculation, pure speculation of him potentially becoming the Nightwing character for a potential Nightwing movie because the director had said that he's still attached to the Nightwing movie. The Nightwing movie script is completely done, and he's saying that you can stick this movie in the DCU or outside the DCU. I was speculating from things that I had seen online, not We Got Discovered or not anything that's these foo-foo bullshit websites. I was speculating that, Tom Holland's contract with Spider-Man ends after Far From Home. So he doesn't have to re-up with Marvel if he doesn't want to. And if the DCEU or Warner Brothers wants to throw him some money, I think him being Nightwing or let's say Tim Drake's Robin, I think that would be a good transition because Robin and Spider-Man are essentially the same characters. Or Nightwing and Spider-Man are essentially the same characters in terms of acrobatics, fighting, but obviously they're different characters in how they're portrayed. And Tom Holland has a lot of range. So I want to throw that out there. Tom Holland is not, as far as I know, he has not been cast as Nightwing. He has had no meetings with Warner Brothers. He's not been talking to Warner Brothers about any DC property, as far as I know. And I never said in that video that he did. I was speculating. So
Uh huh. Uh huh.
I want to throw that out there as we get further along in this topic. But to answer the initial question, can actors play in the DCEU and the MCU? I can give you an example. Zachary Levi, before he was Shazam, was in the Thor movie. Now,
Mm.
he wasn't a main character in the Thor movie, but he was in the Thor movie. Then he later on became Shazam. James Gunn, who's not an actor, is directing Suicide Squad, the Suicide Squad, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So, are there ways you can play into both universes? Yes. Now, here's the thing: Marvel or DC, or let me rephrase, Marvel and Warner Brothers, I would say, they have professional courtesy and mutual respect amongst one another. So they can't legally tell an actor, you can't act in this movie because it's a conflict of interest. The reason why is because every movie is a conflict of interest. Doesn't matter if you're playing a superhero, an action hero, a drama, a comedy. Every single movie that an actor plays in, whether it's for the same studio or multiple studios, is a conflict of interest. Like, for instance, the movie Chaos Walking is a third world movie that Tom Holland is in, where he's basically essentially playing a character on a scavenger hunt with Daisy Ridley. It's essentially the Uncharted movie, just in a third world. Sony can't tell Tom Holland you can't be that movie because it's the same thing as an Uncharted, even though Tom Holland is playing Nathan Drake in Uncharted. They can't do that. Now, I think out of mutual respect, tell they would not tell actors you can't do this. I'm sure there's something in their contract that says, "Hey, you can be Superman, but you can't be Iron Man, though." Like I like you can't. I don't think they can. I don't think they can force actors to do that. I do believe there's something in their contract that alludes to them that says, "Hey, you can be this, but we don't want to hear about you talking to these people about this." Like that's what I'm thinking. I could be wrong. And like I said, from a legal standpoint, I don't believe Disney can tell actors, "Hey, you can be Iron Man, but you can't be Batman in the next universe." Um, there are a couple other examples within the MCU and the DCEU. Like, for instance, Chris Evans was the Human Torch. Now he's Captain. Well, he was Captain America. I know that's not the same, but he was in Fox. Now he's in Disney. Well, he was in Disney. He's not in Disney anymore. So there are definitely layers to it. I would have to say, like, if Tom Holland were to stop being Spider-Man after Far From Home, like say he dies and he's done, then since his contract's over, he can go do whatever he wants to do. Like Christian Bale. Christian Bale's in the Thor movie. He was Batman. Now, so I mean, there are ways you can do it, but to answer your question, can you do it at the same time? I'm not so sure. I know legally they can't do that, but I'm sure there's something in their contract where it's like, you can play this character, but we don't want to hear about you signing some other deals where you're playing another comic book character. Something of that nature where they don't have to legally bind them to it, but they can scare them into not doing something like that. Jeremy, have you ever seen that kind of duality where you see actors playing in the same or different sandboxes at the same time? Something of that nature?
I really like this question. I mean, Iris, you always come with the great questions, but this one in particular, I feel like we could have an entire video dedicated to this one thing, because there are examples of it happening. Ryan Reynolds is the guy, right? Ryan Reynolds played Deadpool. He played another version of Deadpool. He played Green Lantern. So he's actually done the Marvel and the DC thing. Then there are others that have done it. However, as hard as it is to believe, when you look at Ryan Reynolds, you're like, yeah, I mean, it was like 15 years ago when he did Green Lantern. So it's been a while. I mean, it was a decade in between Green Lantern and Deadpool. And that kind of speaks to your point, Alex, like, is it legally okay versus would audiences accept it? I think are two slightly different questions.
Right.
For me, and I'm curious what your take on it is, if they cast Tom Holland to play Nightwing, it would create some sort of like schism in my brain where I think my head would explode. And not because Tom Holland isn't talented enough to pull both of these performances off. It's just that Spider-Man is so iconic, and Nightwing is to a slightly lesser degree, but still incredibly iconic. Right. How can you process as an audience member that this one person can be these two things? Well, that's acting, but I think I might be a little bit like, it might throw me off a little bit. What about you?
I'm not gonna lie, it would throw me off too. I mean, like, to give an example, like we talked about Ryan Reynolds. Before Green Lantern, Ryan Reynolds was Deadpool first in X-Men Origins. Yeah. And then when he died, and I remember they were doing press for Green Lantern, or not press, promotion that he got cast. I was like, so we're gonna have Deadpool transition to Green Lantern. And when you watch Green Lantern, Hal Jordan is supposed to be serious in that movie. He's like a PG version of Deadpool.
Yeah.
So, and then when you watch Deadpool, the actual Deadpool movie, Deadpool is making fun of the fact that he was Green Lantern and a crazy version of himself. So it's like, and in a way, it all ties together. But to your point, yes, it would be hard because, like I said this about Tom, if you did move him to a Robin character or a Nightwing character, it would be hard for me to separate those two, because Nightwing's like brute force strong. Spider-Man is playful, at least the one he's playing. So how do you, it's like, how do you mentally grasp that,
Yes. And obviously that is the job of an actor, to be able to convince us that they can be multiple different things that aren't themselves. But as an audience member, and I think me and Alex are good anecdotal samplings of what it would be like if you were to have one actor play two very iconic characters from different publishing houses in this case. But back in the day, and I know that this isn't something that is going to respond with most people, because we're talking like way back in the day, like 6-7 decades ago, back in the day in old Hollywood, they would sign multi-year contracts at studios. Like, oh, okay, you want to do this movie with MGM? Great. For the next 7 years, you only do movies with MGM. Like, we can lend you out to another studio if you can sweeten the pot for us, but for the most part, we've got your ass for 7 years. And that means if we want you to be in this movie, we want you to be in the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids remake or whatever, and you're locked into a contract with us and you don't think that's going to be good for your career, too bad, dude. We've got you. You don't get to say yes or no to projects because your contract was not for a picture. Your contract was with the studio. Well, we are kind of starting to see that come back around in a big way, in particular with the multi-picture deals that Marvel has their talent sign. And then along with that, now that you are an entity for this studio, now you have to be a good brand ambassador for them. So if you're on Twitter and you start comparing the treatment of a certain group of people to the treatment of another group of people, and the studio that you're working for doesn't like it, they can fire you. And I mean, that whole thing of cancel culture, it's all the way back to the beginning of movies. This has always been a thing where like, oh yeah, we know you're gay. We know you're a gay actor, but we're going to need you to marry this woman over here because like, we don't want the public knowing that you're gay. We want you to be this, heteronormative, straight and narrow, all American guy. So we want you to marry this famous actress over here. So like there was a lot of like arranged marriages, curating of images. You basically, when you sign these contracts, you become you are now under the rules that were set in place by whoever you sign the contract with. So I mentioned that to say, for one thing, back in the day, you would not literally be allowed to do 2 different studio movies at the same time. Right. And then also to say that cancel culture and all that stuff isn't exactly a new phenomenon. Like people aren't all of a sudden getting in trouble for going against the company policy. It's always been that way, for better or worse. But yeah, I think that's interesting.
Yeah. And to his point, like back in the day, if you like, there were only 2 avenues you could do in Hollywood: TV and movies. So like, if you wanted to be on a TV show, networks who are ironically owned by studios, they would sign you to a 7-year contract deal on TV, but that's you can't do movies. They don't want you to cross-pollinate, and vice versa. But now, like for instance, I was thinking about Anthony Mackie. Anthony Mackie is now Captain America, but he's done other movies while being Captain America. Like he's done stuff for Netflix. I think he has a Hulu movie coming out. No, he did an Apple TV movie called The Banker with Samuel L. Jackson.
I heard about that.
While filming Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So like now we're in a different scope where you can play in so many different sandboxes. But from a legal standpoint, everything that an actor is able to do, they are allowed to play in any movie that they're I guess afforded. But to Jeremy's point, like when they shot like Infinity War and Endgame, they shot those movies back to back. So a full year for most actors who were pivotal in that movie, they couldn't go and do other work because they had to be on set. So to be in a DC movie and a Marvel movie at the same time, for most actors, it's a lot. It's time consuming. So for a lot of reasons why they can't really do both. But I don't believe Disney or Warner Brothers can tell them, hey, you can't do this because it's a conflict of interest. That didn't make any sense to me, because everything that's in a theater is a conflict of interest, whether it's by Warner Brothers or DC, or like say for instance, if Anthony Mackie wanted to be a part of The Boys season 3, what is Marvel going to say? No, they can't do that. Like if he's able to do it within that allotted time while being Captain America, he's not violating his contract at all. I will bet this, they'll probably kill him in the Captain America 4 movie. Lucky Captain America. That's what would happen. But they would, as far as anything else, I don't think they could really do that. Jeremy, did you have anything else to add? Or
no, I think that's a great point. The way that you break it down at the end there is like, yeah, they might not technically be allowed, but they will find a way to make you wish that you didn't do it.
Exactly. So I mean, but that, I hope that answers your question, Iris. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think about actors who play in both sandboxes? Do you think that an actor could potentially be in the DCEU or in the MCU? And what do you think about them gelling in both sandboxes? Just jump into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts.